Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rarely Typical, a podcast where I am talking about living with a chronic illness, finding hope, and living a life that is rarely typical. Today, we have two of my PH friends, my PH community, if you will. I am going to be chatting with both Chelsea and Lisa, who you have heard on the podcast at some point now. We are going to be chatting about working with a chronic illness, all of us having PH, but also a little different. And our jobs are all a little different. I was asked recently about how you can work with this condition and if you're able to. And we can all answer those things a little differently, which is why I thought this would be a fun episode to have all three of us on. The three of us could honestly sit here and just chat. So we will spare you guys that and we will just get through the questions. But I do want to introduce you guys to these people if you have not heard them before. So, hey guys.
Morning, Jerry.
Good morning.
My name's Chelsea Price. I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension in 2020, in March of 2020, and I am a full-time product designer for a medical device company.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I was diagnosed officially with pulmonary hypertension in 2017. I also have a congenital heart defect, so I have type 1-2 combination. I am a pediatric nurse, and I went from full-time nursing to part-time to once a week. So, yeah.
And if you don't know who I am Jerry Langan, and I was diagnosed in September of 2018. In my prior life, I was a marketing director for a real estate company. And then after I was diagnosed, I stopped working, and it all kind of happened at the same time. I stopped working after I had my kids, and then I was diagnosed in the same year that I would have started working again. And so now I'm an advocate almost full time and a stay-at-home mom most of the time. So I wanted to ask you guys to share your parts of your story. So when you were diagnosed, and we'll hit Chelsea first and then go to Lisa, can you share about when you were diagnosed and then what it looked like for you with work and how all of that worked out?
So I was diagnosed in March of 2020. I live in St. Louis, right when COVID happened and everything was shut down. And the whole story about how I was diagnosed and when I was diagnosed was pretty crazy because stayed home from work on Monday, pulled our kids out of school on Tuesday. Wednesday, my mother-in-law came in town to stay with us for the 2 weeks of lockdown. And then I was hospitalized Thursday and then diagnosed. So I think like the biggest blessing around when I was diagnosed was that we were all working remote. I don't know how I would have coped having to go back into office with a new condition like that. It was interesting how it all happened because I could sort of take a little bit of a break during the day as I needed. I worked in advertising at an advertising company. So it was very relaxed and they were very understanding about what was going on with me.
So I was diagnosed, I had my son in September of 2016, and I had him at 32 weeks because I was in congestive heart failure. And we knew the pressures were high, but it wasn't until June of 2017, and I was 4 weeks post-op from open heart surgery. We kind of were hoping the pressures would go down after surgery, and they didn't. So then I officially started medication for that. I think I've started on sildenafil. But in the time, I was off for a little bit during my pregnancy. I took 12 weeks off. I went back to the bedside 2 days a week, 12-hour shifts, until I had my surgery. So I was back for about 6 months beforehand, and I could tell the definite decline of how I was feeling, how I would end up towards the end of the day after those long shifts. It's taxing, and then you're home most of the day on your off days with a 6-month-old. And then I had my open heart in May of 2017, and I was off for the summer. So after I was like officially diagnosed with the PH and we were trying to get adjustments, I wasn't ready to go back to work. So I did take an additional, I want to say like 8 to 10 months off before I went back to the bedside. But then I ended up having the ability to go back registry. So I would work 4 shifts a schedule with the ability to pick up more. but they were still 12-hour shifts. So I've been on and off between surgeries and the kids. And now I work like once a week, but I'm outpatient. So I've had that transition from bedside to outpatient.
And Chelsea, you stayed remote, right? You're still remote now.
Yes, I am still remote. So that is probably another very big blessing that I can do my job from anywhere. So I never, after COVID, we didn't go back to office for a long time. And then I'm trying to think towards like the end of my time at the agency. I think we might have gone back like 1 or 2 days a week, but it was more so we would be there for meetings and then I would go home. But by that time, I was already stable and up on medication. So I didn't feel like I needed to be away too much. And again, like most of the time I was working from home and we took videos, all the video calls. But now, yeah, I'm 100% remote, even still.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine like doing what Lisa is doing and having to go in every day because I feel like with my symptoms, right? And like the treatment that I'm on versus like we're all in different treatments. I feel like I am in Hell Week for 10 days. I would not have the ability to go into the office. And then to add the symptoms of, I spend all of my time in the bathroom. I would be at the bathroom probably more often than I would be at the desk. Like, I just could not imagine being in an office. And even though, like, I am mostly remote, right? Unless I'm traveling for conferences or whatever, I would not be able to sustain a day to day because who knows what I'm going to feel like when I wake up tomorrow. Or if it's the middle of Hell Week, who knows how bad the pain is going to be when I wake up. It would just not be sustainable for me with the treatment that I'm on. But because we're all in different treatments, you guys are able to do different things. So how are you managing your treatments, Lisa?
So I was pregnant and during COVID and I was on Remodulin, and I remember I didn't tell anybody at work and I quit because there was no way I was going to work with the IV pump at the same time as I was pregnant and high risk and the world was shutting down. So it was just a lot. But after I had my daughter, I transitioned just to tadalafil. So I'm on tadalafil now and a lot of other heart medications, which is funny because there's no way I don't think I could work the floor again because with all the diuretics, you're in the bathroom a lot, the running around constantly. There's no way I could even attempt to go back to bedside. I don't know how people do that. I work with a great team, so we can get up and walk around but I'm just on tadalafil along with my other heart medications and diuretics.
We're all on some form of diuretic, right? But besides the diuretics, I feel like when I plan something for the day, I plan one thing in the morning and maybe one thing in the afternoon, just based off of how tired I can get quickly. And we're all stable, all mostly, right? We're all mostly stable. And I feel like my quality of life and how I'm able to function now is so different than it was when I was diagnosed. When I was diagnosed, there would have been zero possibility of me being at work. But me now, even now, stable with really good numbers, I still wear out quickly. I could not imagine the mental load of having to sit in an office or sit in meetings all day like Chelsea does, right? Sit in meetings all day because I feel like the brain fog, the fatigue gets me anyway. And I'm not having to do what you do. I don't even plan meetings. Like we're recording today. I'm not doing another meeting today. Are you crazy? Like I don't have the mental capacity for that. I just couldn't imagine having to take meetings all the time. Like how many meetings are you having a day, Chelsea?
The meetings vary. So most of the time, well, I mean, it sounds like a lot. I mean, it is kind of a lot, like a day of meetings, but a lot of times we're not necessarily on camera. Like we work in a place where it's like, you can turn on your camera, turn on my camera for my close buddies at work, but like they are also fully aware. I'm very open about what's going on in my life or, hey, I feel like garbage. I am taking the call from my bed but I'm here and I'm working. And so I think having the ability to just go lay horizontal for a little bit is big. Now we do travel for in-person meetings sometimes, and those are hard because in the afternoon, I'm usually nauseous, especially getting up on newer treatments. Like I have been more nauseous in the afternoon. And I've just found that if I am more tired from a busy day, whether that's like sitting in all day meetings and having to be on, show my face and be present, I get wiped out really easily. And then it just makes all of the symptoms that much worse in the evening. And then, like Lisa said, then it's mom time and I don't have a choice to like go lay down. So being remote is helpful, but still, I mean, there are still a lot of meetings and trying to be on and leading projects is a challenge sometimes for sure.
Yeah. And like conference, I am so wiped at conference. Lisa's been with me. I'm like, I just got to go lay down for a second. I don't have the ability to people all day and meetings. And then not even just the meetings and the talking to people all day, but it's also having to do work on top of that, like do stuff on your own. I just don't think that I have the actual capacity also dealing with doctor's appointments and clinic visits and just my regular doctor's appointments, not even my PH doctor's appointments. I don't know how everybody can do all of the things. You know what I'm saying?
It's hard. And I think you have to, I'm always very open about things. And I also think working within the medical field now, as far as like production and product design, people are very understanding because they are hearing from other patients with other conditions all the time, which I think in turn then makes them more accepting. And it's a fantastic team. Like they're very understanding. And there's been days where I'm like, I did not have a good appointment with my doctor. And they're like, just take the day. Like, we don't need you in. So I think having that and making sure that you're communicating, as uncomfortable as it is sometimes to share that, I think then, your coworkers can help support you through a lot of that time as well.
Yeah, I agree with Chelsea. I do Coumadin clinic and I schedule it before I start my day. So I'll come into office, drop some of my stuff off, run all the way across 2 city blocks to get to my appointment, come back. So everybody knows what's going on with me. And we work in a small office in the back of a bigger office. And they all understand it because they all understand my diagnosis and how I might be feeling, which is really helpful. And it's nice to come in after a bad appointment and have that time where you can talk to somebody who gets it from the medical side and they're like able to support you. And then I think it also just helps being there to be like, okay, I can't focus on it all day, but I have like such a great team. And I have to communicate it with everybody because there are days where I'm like, I don't feel good. And I came into work one day and they all later told me, they're like, we looked at you and we're like, why are you here? And one of the girls kept saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And I wasn't. But it's like, it does get awkward or you feel like you're constantly talking about it. But I think your coworkers genuinely care for the most part, and they can help you navigate, like, how's your day going to go? Can they help you answer an extra call or pick up something or say, hey, go take a walk, just to move around. So yeah, I think communicating sometimes gets hard when it's your whole life. And you feel like that might be sometimes all you talk about. But I think that's what helps in my job right now is being able to communicate with them and share, okay, this is what's going on. This is what we're planning. And this is how I'm doing today. And they're all very receptive.
I think the distraction of work too, Lisa, like you're talking about too, is sometimes I think if I were just sitting at home after a bad appointment and not focused on something else, which I mean, it's also not necessarily healthy. Like I have time to process on my drive home, but then there's only so much I can control and I need to just like move on with my life and focus on something else so it doesn't spiral me out of control. So I do think that for me, being able to be busy with work sometimes while my kids are at school, my husband's traveling for work, I can just have something to focus on and distract myself with.
I think distraction absolutely works. I use all of it, right? Even though I feel like I'm always constantly talking about our disease because it is my actual scope of work. I do feel like having meetings or going to conference or sitting down and working on like a blog or this podcast helps me like check out a little bit. Even though the subject matter is still the disease, I feel like part of me gets to detach from it when I'm editing a podcast. Like I'm worried about the editing part and not really what's being said. And so it does help me feel normal, right? And it gives me purpose and it gives me more than just sitting around and thinking about the fact that I feel like crap, or that I have a doctor's appointment coming up, or like, when do I need to make my next appointment? Like, it gives me a distraction, but it also gives me a little bit of purpose behind everything I'm doing. And it doesn't feel like I'm just, I don't know, just having the soul sucked out of me. I was going to ask you, Lisa, how do you work with the flexibility? Because you just had a really big heart surgery. And so, how does your work flex with that? Like vacation or sick leave or what?
Because I work registry, I'm technically considered almost like a zero status. When you are registry, inpatient, and bedside, they make you work like 3 or 4 shifts a schedule. So I'm making my schedule, and it's if we are low census, we don't have enough patients, I would be like the first person to get flexed because I don't get benefits, I get nothing. So when I transitioned down to the office, they kind of run it a little bit differently. So they also hired another girl in our office that was registry too. So we work like 3 to 4 shifts a month, and we don't get vacation, but they are so understanding. I remember I had my open heart a year ago. This time last year, I was still at Mayo. I had to take, I don't know if it was a leave of absence, but for medical reasons, and my supervisor had to approve of it because I technically don't get coverage. I don't get FML. I don't think it's FMLA coverage because I don't work enough hours. So my supervisor approved it. I came back after 10 weeks of the open heart. I worked my schedule around when I had my pacemaker done originally in January, so I could work my days, and then I had like 10 days off, and then I came back. And then with that big admission again in May, I had to call, and I was like, I'm actually in the hospital. I might be able to make it Friday, I might not. And then the next day I was like, yeah, I'm not going to make it. And so I had to call. That was the first time I've ever called off since being down in the office I've been there for 2 years now. And I felt bad for my little group because we work together. There's only 7 of us hired, I want to say, but usually there's only 2 or 3 of us there at a time doing all the calls for the day. And they're like, don't worry, we've got it. We're going to figure it out. Worry about yourself. So that was the day I went in because I didn't want to call up for a third day in a row. Technically, it would have been 3 weeks because then you have to go to HR, and I don't get typical vacation time or typical FMLA coverage. So it's just kind of like a hassle. So I'm like, I'm going to come in. I got dropped off at work that day, and 5 days later, I was readmitted again because my hemoglobin was 6.5. I needed 2 blood transfusions, and I was in acute congestive heart failure. So work has been super understanding. I try to schedule around my appointments, and Coumadin clinic's like the only thing I come in early for. But I think because I work in the same place that I get my care, and because they understand the ups and downs that patients like me have, they're very understanding. If I need to take an extended leave, then I would go through HR, but yeah, that was a lot.
That sucks. What about you,
Yeah.
Chelsea? Because I know you also had surgery.
So when I had my heart surgery, I was very optimistic that I was going to be back the next week, which looking back was a really cute thought, but definitely was not going to happen. But again, I was remote at that time. Now I'm technically contract. So through the contracting agency, I get like 10 days of vacation, which is not much. I can also flex my time. So I can like work extra hours like earlier on in the week to then make up for appointments. And I mean, like, thankfully, there's been a few times that I've been hospitalized being a contractor. And I think that that's what I stress about is I'm like, oh, well, not that we're strapped for money or anything, but like, I'm still like, oh, I'm supposed to be like at work. I feel like, growing up in the 90s, we were like 100% perfect attendance. And that is, I think, shaped all of us and how we are now that we can't take sick days.
Mhm.
So that is something that I've worked on internally of if I can't take care of myself, I'm not going to be performing like I need to be anyway. So it's okay if I take those steps. And again, my team is so great. And when they're recognizing, oh, she's in the hospital or oh, she's had a tough day, it's okay. Just like take the day. Take the day.
That is so nice. I hate that for people that cannot have understanding bosses, because I mean, for the reality of most people, they work, and if they're not there, then they're just going to let somebody else do it because you're just a number in certain companies. And that's so hard to also financially have to have that. Like the people who financially cannot afford to not work, but also require all of the same things we do, like doctor's appointments and surgeries and whatever. I just couldn't imagine what that burden looks like because I mean, I've been very fortunate. Like my husband works and I stay at home. It looks different, but there's also options, right? Like jobs that do have flex or jobs that you can do it remotely or I mean, I'm on disability, so I can't work a certain amount because I'm on disability. So there are options. It's just really hard and that sucks. What advice do you have for someone who is newly diagnosed and wanting to figure out if they can work?
I would say take it day by day. Take it day by day. Give yourself the grace you need because it is a huge thing to take in when you're getting told news that is now maybe changing your future plans. Hopefully, you have a good employer that is understanding, and you don't necessarily always have to disclose your health information to your employer. There's a lot of different things out there that you can reach out to, but I think giving yourself the grace you need to grieve possibly the new life that you're about to start, and then getting as many resources from your clinic. Sometimes they have information about insurance coverage and what does that look like if you can't work, and utilizing all those resources out there to help ease that stress load. And it's not usually forever, get your meds stabilized and hopefully, I mean, it's not for everybody and I understand that, but I think we go through different phases of life each year. We never know what we're going to be in, you know? I think that would be my advice. Give yourself a lot of grace and utilize any resources that anyone's willing to give you and offer you.
I think for me, when I was diagnosed, nobody ever really talked about not working. So it was just, for me, I just continued on. I do wish I would have taken some time to just process and figure everything out. But everything was changing so much at that time with COVID. So I think, like Lisa said, give yourself grace. Patience has been a huge lesson for me in my diagnosis, not only getting to a diagnosis, but then post diagnosis and things changing, sporadically, but giving yourself grace, communicating as best you can. Like Lisa said, you don't have to disclose. For me, that was the best option because I felt like if I did share, then people would recognize and understand exactly how heavy of a burden it is. And I think even then, they still didn't fully grasp what it all meant, but they knew it was a big deal. And so in turn, they were able to support me, I think, more than if I wouldn't have shared exactly what was going on.
I think that if I had to give advice on it, I would say to give yourself grace, especially in the newly diagnosed portion, like getting on treatment, getting stable, worry about yourself for as long as you can, because once you're able to get stable, rhyme, once you're able to get stable and you're on appropriate treatment, the outlook for working looks different. Your capacity changes, your ability to do things changes, and then try and find an option that suits your lifestyle. There are people who work in clinic or in the office and have these diseases. I know lots of patients who work full-time jobs and are able to because they're on stable treatment. But when you're newly diagnosed, like Chelsea said, there's so many things changing at one time. Like, just give yourself enough grace to figure out yourself, your body, your new normal before you have to think about that. And I know that that's not always realistic, but FMLA, being able to be on short-term disability, being on long-term disability, applying for disability, like those are options that I was presented when I was diagnosed and I was in the hospital. I was very thankful that my doctors at diagnosis were like, do you need us to help you with paperwork? Is there something that we can do to make this easier for you before you leave? And so they helped me fill out paperwork while I was in the hospital. And that made all the difference because I was still trying to figure out, how do I do this treatment? I don't have the time to look at how do I fill out this paperwork? You know what I mean? And the boys were still little and our house was still running, whether or not I was there. And so it was very helpful for me to have somebody else do that stuff for me. So there are organizations like PHA and Team Phenomenal Hope who have people that can help you with that kind of stuff. You just need to reach out to them and see, like, is there a patient advocate? Like, is there like a patient support team that can help me do this stuff because I was just diagnosed? And then the hospitals have that too. Like my hospital had that. I know that's not everybody's hospital, but a lot of hospitals do have people that specialize in that kind of stuff. Okay, we're going to hit final advice. What has been the hardest part since you were diagnosed working with your condition, and how have you overcome that?
I think the hardest part as of more recently is dealing with the progression, which you and I touched on previously. The progression, and I feel like I'm in a more demanding position in terms of work now, and balancing the titration. I think for me, it's always been the medication and the side effects of the medication and trying to contribute at the level that I want to contribute at work, and also just not feeling my best. And I think being able to now say, I need to take 15 minutes and just go lay down, or I don't have to turn on my camera from this meeting and I can sit in my comfy chair over here. That has probably been the biggest thing, is just still continuing to give myself grace so that I can not be perfect, but can be satisfied with how I'm contributing at work.
I think the hardest part after my diagnosis and everything I've dealt with was actually leaving the bedside. I did the bedside on and off for about 10 years, and that I loved my job. Having to admit that it was too much and I couldn't do the 12-hour shifts. I couldn't even part 2 days a week. I couldn't do it was too much. That was my hardest transition, I would say. I was really lucky to slide into this job that I'm in now and had that opportunity and ran with it. But there was a while where I still struggled. Did I do the right thing? I didn't feel like a nurse for a while still because I wasn't actually hands-on to the patient. And then I finally, realized, okay, this is where I need to be. I'm still a nurse. I'm still doing things that I would be on the floor, just differently, not having that patient contact, but it's all like triaging on the phone. So I think just giving myself time to realize that I am grateful where I am, the opportunities I have, and that I can still be a nurse. I think that's what helped me overcome that transition, that difficult part of leaving the bedside, is I know that I just needed to give myself time to cope and really remind myself, like, I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful to be in the opportunity that I'm in.
I would say the hardest part of stopping work and then doing what I'm doing now is that I had this idea of what success looked like for me, that it was like getting the corner office, being a C-suite title, right? And I had this idea that like that was what success was. And obviously being diagnosed and having to rethink and reevaluate all of the priorities in my life, it was that really success to me? And like having to redefine success was very hard. And something that I grew up in, right? Like you said, like 90s kids, we're told your career is the biggest thing in your life. It will be the biggest decision you make, all of those things. And so I felt like no longer working in the capacity that I thought I should be working made me unsuccessful or made me less than. And I think mentally that was the hardest part for me. Like not working was not the hard part. It was the not succeeding in these goals that I had set for myself. And the way that I've overcome that is that I pivoted and changing course, right? And changing course and redefining what success meant to me was a lot of internal work that I had to figure out, and redefining what was important. And I mean, I just had 7 years, right? I just celebrated 7 years. And I didn't know if I was going to get this time. And I said that in a different podcast episode was I didn't know I would make it this far. I didn't know I would get 7 years. And so that C-suite didn't look as sweet when you're looking at the scope of being able to hug my husband at 10 years and being able to watch my kids grow up and be successful humans. Like those are the things that I've been able to redefine as successful. And it has given me purpose. It's just purpose in a different direction. So pivoting and redefining success and redefining purpose was probably the hardest part of stopping the work that I was doing and changing it to the work that I am doing. So that's my advice. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I know we could do this for hours. We could sit and chat for hours. I am thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for our friendships and that, Instagram brought us together and that you guys have been my community. You genuinely have been my community. You're the people that really do understand me and what all of this means. Because if you're not one of the three of us, you don't understand, right? Like you couldn't possibly understand if you're healthy or if you are not dealing with this disease either, like progression, all of the things that come with that. So I've been thankful for you guys and thankful that you guys wanted to hang out with me today and let me record you. If you liked this episode, if you got something from it, let me know. Leave a comment, like it, subscribe, all of the things. And I hope that you guys got something out of this. So thanks for hanging out with me, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.